Rozmowy o przyszłości, lęki, obawy, ale też scenariusze, jak może wyglądać przyszłość. O tym rozmawiamy. Dzisiaj z Martínem Caparrósem. Witam bardzo serdecznie. Your monumental book, Yes, Starvation, is not only about starvation, it's about suffering as well. And Yuval Harari, a philosopher, writer, in his famous book, says that we will be free from the suffering, from the starvation very quickly. Do you believe him?
Mm-hmm. Maybe he will.
He will.
Yeah, his friends, for certain, he is. No, I mean, I don't see in what he's based to say that. I mean, we have already achieved the technical means to free everyone from hunger, and that's the toughest thing about it. That like 40 years ago, in the most important historical moment that history does not record, humanity achieved the capacity to feed all of it,
yes,
all of
because
its members.
Now we produce more
we
food.
Can produce more food than what is needed for all of us. And still there is almost 1 billion, about 900 million people that don't eat enough. So the problem is not technical. I mean, it's not that we cannot feed people. It's political. It's economic. And that I don't see why is it going to be solved by technique.
Can you imagine?
Sorry, I ask first, but who benefits?
Well, we all. I mean, we people from more or less rich countries. I mean, richer countries. We, in general, because we consume, we eat so much more food than what we need, and we just throw away so much food, like a third of it.
But it's not a benefit.
Yeah, it's a benefit. I mean, it's our way of life. It's a way of keeping our commerce going on and keeping our societies going on, consuming and consuming and consuming. That's general. But in particular, there are, of course, big corporations that benefit much more from this concentration of let's say, elementary wealth in a sector of the world, right? This is the way. I mean, the economic circulation of food is organized. I mean, you produce. I mean, for instance, my country, Argentina, it produces soy mostly for enough for 400 million people, and still there is like 3-4 million people in Argentina that don't eat enough. Why is that? I mean, because the soy is not produced to feed these people. It's produced in order to export it, mostly to China, where it feeds their pigs and their fish and stuff like that. Because this exportation pays more than these hungry people around. So, in a very schematic way, this is a bit of the reason why we produce enough food, and still there is so many people that don't eat enough, right?
What you are describing now is a problem with moral attitude towards those who
moral,
suffer
political,
from hunger. But perhaps on a political level or economic level, that kind of people and differentiation between hierarchy of people is needed. So perhaps it's not only that we have bad morals, that we cannot help because we don't have proper attitude, but there are systematic reasons why these differences between rich West and some other areas of the world that are poor is needed.
Of course, it's needed for the benefit of all those who were describing a few minutes ago. They need this distinction. But this kind of distinctions disappear when there is enough conscience as to make them disappear. I mean, I don't know, 300 years ago, what was needed was slavery in many parts of the world. But at some point, slavery was impossible to sustain, right? It was unsustainable. So they had to find another way. I mean, those who benefited from slavery had to find another way. What I mean is, if we achieve, I mean, if we reach this kind of conscience in which we do not stand anymore, that so many people are hungry in a world that it's able to feed them, so, well, something is going to start moving, and something is going to change. I mean, I always quote as an example what happened to ecology 50 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was in, I don't know, the university, for instance, in Paris. The group of ecologists there were so small. I mean, they were like, I don't know, 10 or 20. And they, they made some noise, and they tried to talk to people about it, but no one really cared. And they kept on shouting, and they kept on writing, and they kept on demonstrating. And nowadays, you cannot just, I don't know, try to be mayor of a little village in Spain without explaining how you're gonna save the world from the ecological threat, right? Because it has been imposed as a need, as a political need by all these movements. Well, why can't we do it the same thing about hunger? I mean, the first answer is because we don't want to, because we don't feel the need to. But 40 or 50 years ago, we didn't feel the need to pay attention to ecological threats. So maybe.
So to change attitude, we need certain tools. What kind of tools would you recommend to do it? And would you include your own writing in it?
No, I mean, no, I don't know. No, I'm absolutely unable to any kind of prescription. I mean, I don't feel comfortable with them. I don't feel comfortable when I'm given some prescription. Moreover, when I am asked to give any. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that is one of the big changes that I hope are going to happen, but I don't know, is that we, at some point, will not be waiting for others to tell us what to do, but to look for ourselves in order to find what to do. I hope this is going to happen someday. I mean, this would be an enormous change in the way we do politics and we do relate to each other and we live, right? So I'd be in a contradiction if I'd say what to do.
Of course, you have many topics to write about. What I'm interested in is the book about migration that was published in Poland. How do you imagine the future of these phenomena, the problem of migration?
Well, it's one of the older ones. I mean, we have always been migrating, right? I was remembering one of these days this extraordinary situation, maybe, like 100,000 years ago or like that, when the whole humanity was just like 20,000 to 30,000 people roaming around in Africa, you know? And from there, they just went everywhere and created this 7 or 8 billion people that we are now. So they migrated in an enormous scale. We are all migrants in the beginning, and we still are. From time to time, I don't know who's they, invent limits to these migrations, right? They try to stop it at some point. They call it borders or countries or nations or whatever. So they try to stop. But migrations keep on going because it's our, I don't know, it's our way to be in the world. I'm very much interested by what happened just these days in between Central America and North America. I mean, the fact that an endeavor that was until now basically individual, I mean, there was just individuals going their own ways in hidden to try to reach the States, the United States. Now they have gathered together and they became some kind of a movement. You know, this march of Honduras people towards United States has like changed the level of the situation. I don't know how to say the plan of the situation. I mean, it's not an individual enterprise anymore. It's a social enterprise. It's a movement, and I think that it marks a change in what migration can be perceived as.
Sometimes it's presented as something that will threaten the structures of our societies on all levels, cultural, religious, political, economic. Yeah. Do you have that kind of fear?
No, it's not a fear. I mean, for me, it's not a fear. It's a reality. It's a reality, and I welcome it. I mean, I like the way societies change. They evolve. I mean, why are we so keen to keep our societies the way they are right now? I mean, it's really a funny contradiction, because we wanted to keep it, to frozen it the way it is now, but we are very proud of the fact of the way we are now, which is the result of a long evolution. So if they had decided to frozen it, I don't know, 200 years ago, we wouldn't have any of these things we are proud of. See what I mean?
Yes, of course.
So it's quite a contradiction, and I think that yes, migration is one of the main ways in which societies change, and that's very welcome. I mean, for all of us.
There is a possibility of the revolution of people who have not of the poorest.
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, the main frames of these kind of revolution failed. I mean, they didn't work. The ones we suppose that were going to work throughout, the 20th century and so, didn't work. I mean, they didn't create better societies as they were supposed to. So we are now in a moment in which we don't know which kind of society we might be looking forward to. So it's a tough moment for these kind of changes, because we don't have a goal. We don't know where to go to. And moreover, because in the case of most of the hungry people around the world, they are so, how would I say, so oppressed or something like that, but by their condition, that it's very hard for them to organize and to look forward to something different.
Yes, but can you imagine anything that could replace the war or the revolution and channel the radical emotions, social emotions?
I think there is going to be something like that, because there has always been something like that. I mean, throughout history, societies look for a way to change, to improve, to be different. It's just that we have
But the war was the easiest. The wars were the easiest way to change.
Yeah, not really. I mean, not necessarily. I mean, the last, it's not a revolution, but the last big set of changes we have lived are not due to wars. I mean, I don't know, the way the 60s and 70s have changed the way we live, the way we perceive us and our society. It's not due to any war. It's just some social changes, right?
Certain.
But let me finish. Yeah, but I think that we will, as I said, we must be building new ways of changing that we still don't know of. I mean, it's been built usually in many different places and by many different actors. And well, someday it just get all together and produces something. But for the moment, we don't know what that was going to be. That is going to be.
Conflict is always there somewhere.
What?
Conflict, war is always there somewhere.
Yeah.
In one of the areas of the world. Can you envision a global war ahead of us?
I don't know. I mean, it is true that we are living through one of the most peaceful periods in humanity now.
For a long time.
For a very long time, yeah. Yeah. does it mean that we are not going to have any more big conflict? I couldn't say that, but it's true that, well, we seem to have reached the possibility of not having that big conflicts. But what is going to happen once China will be at the level of the States, of the United States, and they will have to really discuss their hegemony in the world? I mean, are they going to just sit around the table and chat? It's hard to believe.
China and Russia.
And Russia as a third actor, but it's mostly United States.
But very important, as we.
Well, you're very close to them, so
yes,
you know them.
For
but,
us, it's very important. But the United States are not so close, but they changed the election.
For the world, it's going to be a moment in maybe 10, 20, 30 years in which the real hegemony is going to be discussed. And usually these things involve some armed conflict. What kind of armed conflict, we don't know either. I mean, they are changing that so much and so fast. This wars without soldiers and stuff like that. No?
From what you're saying, it's clear that differences between people will be there in the future. The difference, mainly economic, but also social, will stay, will be preserved in this or that way. But what will...
Not from what I say. I haven't said that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what is going to be. The great thing about the future is that we
do not know what will happen, of course. But when you say that...
No, but I mean, I have studied history, right? And the only thing I still remember from those very faraway times is that that we, in the end, are learning to live better and more justly. I mean, more. We are. I mean, if you compare the way we live now with the way they lived, I don't know, 500 years ago or 2,000 years ago, we live so much more fairly and justly.
But do you really believe that we will have shared history in the future?
That we will have
shared history? Because that would be the only history you could learn from, all of us, like the people of the world.
What do you mean by shared history?
Shared history is the history that, for example, is important for me here. I'm Polish and I have my own history.
Common history.
Common is, of course, the word that can be used to describe it. Do you think
we
that
don't know how is it going to be? I mean, we really don't know. I have just finished a novel about, which is supposed to happen in like 2070 or something like that.
Your novel?
My novel, yeah, my novel. And at that moment, people are supposed to they don't want to live anymore because they can transfer their brains, their minds, to a kind of a machine where they live like in a kind of a paradise, a perfect paradise, technological, where they can do whatever they want, or they think so. I mean, they don't know, but they think they can live with that. That which could be considered as the most individual choice that you could have. I mean, just to have your mind in a place where you can imagine whatever you want. It will be at the same time a common situation. I mean, if millions and millions do the same thing, even if that same thing is a very individual thing. So, yeah, I think that we will have a common history or a shared history. We don't know what is it going to be.
But can you imagine what will happen with the people who capitalism name redundant, because there will be a lot of people.
Yeah, they are already. I mean, I think that
it happens now.
Yeah. I think that I wrote in my book about hunger that I was amazed to realize that so many people are just, as you said, redundant. I mean, it's like 1 billion people for whom...
1 billion people,
it's a lot of people. I mean, most of the hungry people are that. I mean, people for whom...
But not only hungry, you know, because...
No, not only. I mean, most of them, and
okay.
some more, of course, and many more. But it's people for whom, like, global capitalism doesn't have a function. They don't. They cannot find what to do with them, what to extract from them. They cannot even exploit them.
That's the goal.
Yeah, and that's a very... I mean, it's a strange thing. I always say, if I was the, how do you say, the manager of an industry, let's say, of a production unit in which like 30% of my production tools were unused, I would be fired. I mean, it's a very badly administrated system, one in which 30% of the workforce is just useless. And of course, if they were coherent and they were shameless, they would just eliminate all these people because they're...
Eliminate?
Well, if they were, as I said, coherent and shameless, and they could do it cheaply, let's say. Luckily, fortunately, they can't. So this is the people to whom they send from time to time just, I don't know, 50 kilos of grains in order to say, well, we care about them.
Because this problem concerns not only the poorest country, it concerns Europe, the United States. There are people who are not needed anymore, and they, you know, they are without. They will live without the dignity. That's the problem.
Yeah, yeah. There's a big discussion now about what is going to happen when, well, as it's happening now, machines take more and more functions, right?
Yes, that's.
Is it going to just, how do you say, make that all these people don't have anything more to do? Or is it going to create new occupations for all those people? I mean, it's in discussion, and still
that's
we don't
more
know.
optimistic.
Because it's, no, but it's true that in, I don't know, for instance, in the beginning of the 19th century in England, when there were all these new machines and stuff, the Luddites and others were just throwing or breaking the machines because they thought that they were going to leave them, all of them, without any job or whatever. And I don't know, 20 or 30 years later, there were much more jobs than they had never been. So we don't know what is going what's going to be the result. But there is a very legitimate fear that it will just marginalize many people, right?
Two questions in one. What, in your opinion, will be the biggest danger for humanity in the future? And what is your biggest fear?
Fear. I think the biggest danger is that inequality is getting more and more sophisticated. I mean, there are more and more means to keep this inequality growing, right? And that means that those who benefit from this inequality can keep on aggrandizing it, keep on living with that, with less and less problems, right? But at some point it's going to explode. I mean, you cannot just keep on going in that direction and pretend that it's not going to crash at some point. So I don't know how it's going to end.
And yours?
Mine is just very stupidly that I'm not going to see it, and I'm very curious. I'm really curious. I have like a nostalgia, how do you say, nostalgia or something of the future.
Nostalgia of the future.
Yeah,
not of the past.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful metaphor. I do understand you.
Yeah. I think that so many interesting things are going to happen that I will not be able to see.
But Harari says that we can live, you know, as long we want. So maybe
it's absolutely not true.
It's not true.
Well, not yet.
Would you scan your brain and give it to the machine?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if I could believe in the truth of that, in my novel, this truth is not very well established. I mean, it's doubtful. But if I could really believe in it, I would do it. But
without
just right now,
hesitation.
bring me the machine.
I don't know if I should wish you that kind of scenario or not, but it sounds very interesting.
It is. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dziękuję.